Please welcome U.S. Representatives Tom Barrett, Debbie Dingell, Bill Huizenga, and Kristen McDonald Rivet. To moderate the conversation, please welcome anchor for WDIV TV4 NBC, Jason Cole.
Good morning, everybody. How are you guys out there? In case you didn't notice, we've solved bipartisanship just by the choice of clothing today. Done and done. Yes. It's great to see you guys. We only have 35 minutes. I'll jump right in. Are all of you guys back on a normal sleep schedule yet after the budget negotiations last week? Tom, I'll start with you.
I have 4 kids, so I'm never on a normal sleep schedule, but more normal than it was last week, for sure.
Debbie, when it comes back to you, if it comes back, are you expecting more midnight sessions?
I think we're going to see a lot of midnight sessions this summer. Do you?
That's his
because
job to ask me.
Republicans don't want to see us doing business in the light of day, but I love them both.
Shots fired immediately.
We passed this bill
And
at
here
7
we go.
o'clock in the morning. And I don't know, in Michigan it gets light out by like 6 a.m. this time of year, so we were in perfect broad daylight, so.
It was just what we did in the middle of the night.
In the Army we got up at like 4 a.m., so.
I will say from a morning news perspective, it was great to have things happening live, but...
Yeah, you guys never get that.
Bill, for you, why start these sessions at 1 a.m.?
First of all, that was a timing issue and a timing decision. Go back, check the tape. I remember during the Pelosi years of the speakership having some awfully late nights into the middle of the night, into getting done with voting at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. So this is not new, folks. It really is about getting that timing done. And I think, quite honestly, what was driving it was the speaker's commitment and desire to have this done before we left for Memorial Day break.
Yeah.
And it really literally was the timing. And look, well, I guess up here the blue team, but the red team put a delay in that coming out of the Rules Committee, right? We had some of our members that said, hey, we're not going to go along with this. Had to go back into negotiations on that, and it literally was the earliest that they could go back. I mean, they had a 10 p.m. Sunday budget committee hearing trying to pass this out. And then that started the clock, and that's why it rolled out the way that it did.
Chris, what was your take on the whole budget process, and where do you see it going from here?
You know, I'm just a Michigan practical, right? So I think, yeah, but they did it too. Is something I didn't accept from my kids, and I just don't think I just don't think it's reasonable. The process really. Was rammed through. Even the Republican members of the committee, the final bill that we passed in the dark of night. Yeah, the sun came up, but when you're starting to post committee meetings at 1 o'clock in the morning, that's a pretty clear message that you're not wanting a lot of daylight on it. And I don't think there was a single person in the chamber who had read the bill when it came to us for a vote. And there's a lot in it that is going to raise costs for most families in Michigan.
You want to have a final word?
I would just say, I mean,
this could take 35 minutes.
We've got
by the way.
45 minutes.
Most of us came from time in the state legislature
Yep.
before going to Washington, D.C., and each of us can point to very specific circumstances. Most recently is last December
that was terrible.
Democrats were in charge of the Michigan Senate. They were losing their grasp on the State House. They had a 36-hour session, I think. I was not present for that, but they are trying to move their bills through in this fashion. So it's not like one side is uniquely responsible for this. And furthermore, we could have passed this out in the middle of the afternoon. The Democrats sponsored like 500 amendments to the bill in a simple measure of fatiguing the process in the purpose of delaying it along the way. None of those amendments were offered in good faith. They were just simply there to prevent the passage of the bill.
Thomas,
My
I
amendments
love
were
you,
offered in
but
good
I
faith.
introduced the President Trump's amendment where he wants to keep the price of prescriptions low in this country. On Wednesday night, he even said it was in the bill. So when they showed me that tape on way too early, because yes, I do get up early, I went, no, it's not in the bill. Everybody voted against it last night. So a lot of those amendments were offered.
So maybe some were offered in good faith, but of over 500, and their members are taking their full allotment of time to debate each of the amendments and then motions along the way. It was an intentional, it was an intentional attempt to delay the process as lengthy as.
Let me jump to, go ahead, Chris.
I just want to say that Tom, you're absolutely right. Democrats do it, Republicans do it, but there's got to be a point where we all just come together and say, this is nonsense. That we need to, we're not playing a football game. It actually isn't red team versus blue team. The things that we are doing, the decisions we're making are impacting everybody's lives. Right?
I don't.
And I actually think both parties ought to be pushing on their leadership that when we negotiate critical things like healthcare and food and education and taxes, that ought to be done in a way that has a lot of daylight on it. And it doesn't have to be this way. Historically, absolutely it has. But when is the time where we just call the question as leaders in Michigan and say enough is enough? This isn't the right way to do it.
It's something you guys can all agree on, I'm sure. Some of the big wins we've had for Michigan, and we've talked about it this week here. Selfridge getting some much-needed help, along with Detroit's got a ton of momentum right now, seeing its first population growth in 70 years. What are you most excited about that's happening in Michigan right now? Kristen, I'll start with you.
You know, I actually, I just need to do a level setting about in my district. So in Michigan right now, 60% of our jobs pay less than $50,000 a year. And in my district, that number is 80%. So there's a lot of great stuff happening in Michigan, and I think that we are starting to see, particularly using the dollars that were coming from the Infrastructure Act and the dollars that came from the CHIPS Act, where we're bringing new businesses, and we're actually seeing manufacturing grow in Michigan. But we still have this issue where, you know, people are not able to get to the end of the month and still be able to pay all of their bills. It's harder and harder to get to the middle class. So there's something starting to happen, something starting to change in Michigan, and we need to make sure that the momentum is there. Because if you really wrap your head around what take-home pay looks like on $50,000 a year, and then think about the cost of daycare and health insurance and housing payments, and you know, it's just not possible for people to really make it. And we have to be able to put together long-term strategies. You know, the mayor talked about this yesterday.
Yeah.
And be able to work in a way that we can agree on the direction that we're headed so that it isn't politically disrupted every other year.
Bill, what about a win for Michigan for you?
Yeah, I will get to that. I do want to make one quick comment in line with that. For me personally, that's one of the reasons why it was so important that we move forward with a reauthorization of what was the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. 40 million families across the nation were going to see their per-child tax credit cut in half if we don't do this. So we disagree on the path oftentimes, but there's a lot of commonality on the goals. Trying to bring this back together. I think we do have a lot of common goals. For something that is, I chalk up as a win. Selfridge is certainly one of those. Some of the things that we've been doing in Fort Custer, in my district, in the 4th Congressional District in Battle Creek. By the way, my grandfather went in and out of Camp Custer during World War I. So it's kind of been interesting coming back to that, having that now in the new district. But this is something that Debbie and I do a lot of work on, is the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative and a lot of the Great Lakes work. I've led a number of letters. We had a letter that Debbie signed to OMB, for example, encouraging full funding. David Joyce, who is one of the other co-chairs, he's the Republican co-chair with me of the Great Lakes Task Force. Debbie and Marcy Kaptur are the Democrat co-chairs. By the way, my joke is with Marcy Kaptur, she and I would struggle to agree that today is Thursday in most instances, but we are lockstep on when it comes to Great Lakes funding. David Joyce has an increase to $500 million a year for 5 years for the GLRI. We've been working very closely with the Trump administration, both in his first term, when it was proposed to be zeroed out. He very up front, very famously at a rally in Grand Rapids at Van Andel Arena, put the money back in and actually juiced it right there on stage. And I think we've been having some really good bipartisan success on that particular issue, and that's one I'm very proud of.
Debbie?
I'm going to agree with Bill on the Great Lakes and start there. And thank the governor for being willing to work with President Trump. She's taken grief from people, but I think all of us here, look, when we were talking earlier about these late night sessions, I don't know that I should be proud of this or take it as a notch, but under Nancy Pelosi, we set the record for the longest markup that ever happened on the Affordable Care Act. And this year we came within 30 minutes of setting the new record, and I was like, we don't need to set a new record. So I've been part of the two longest night sessions. One was Democratic and one was Republican. But the governor is trying to do what's right for Michigan. She went in there and got a mission for Selfridge Air Force Base, which we quite frankly fought for 4 years. And thank you, Donald Trump, for delivering a mission to Macomb County. We need that. We got Braddock Road.
By the way, we're going to cut and snip that one. Right there.
But that's something we've always worked on together. That is something that we have always all done together. Braddock Road, we've been trying to keep invasive species out of the Great Lakes. We've needed to get that done.
Can I inject something in on that? Because the interesting thing is that we've actually been battling Governor Pritzker.
Correct.
And Governor Whitmer has been leading that. The Trump administration's been working on that. The Army Corps has been working on that for a long time. And that is going to be key. That Brandon Road, Lock and Dam area in Joliet, Illinois, is going to be key to protecting the Great Lakes. And we're trying to, Michigan is a part of the agreement along with Illinois, and Governor Pritzker has actually been holding that up, and we've been trying to push that. So, sorry.
So, no, I absolutely agree with Bill. Sometimes you have to fight other states. Like, I think we're all united in how we feel about California on a number of subjects. But talking about that, we're all working together to get the chips done so that we can build a chips plant here in Michigan. And we got to diversify our economy, but we want to keep a strong auto industry, period. I think we all want to work together on keeping it strong and making sure we're a leader, that we lead in innovation and technology. We're going to be damned if any of us is going to cede our leadership to China, and we got to work together on doing that and making sure we stay at global leadership. I spend a lot of time on, all of us do, working on that.
Tom, I'll have you give me a win, but let me just dive into the next question since they brought it up. But the flip side, obviously, is working on those issues that are hampering Michigan right now. And we were looking at unemployment is second highest in the nation. It's gone up 12 straight months. Tell me about a win, but and I'll ask everybody, what's the biggest issue facing Michigan? And what can all of you do at the federal level to tackle it?
Yeah, so wins are a lot of what was covered already. Certainly Selfridge and Battle Creek and other wins that we had. That's near and dear to my heart. I've flown into both of those places and spent a considerable amount of time at each. And really excited to see that next generation mission coming into Selfridge, of course. But I'm an optimistic guy. I was actually voted most optimistic of my high school class, I think. And I think that's because I thought it was the Lions' year every year. And
it is this year, though, baby.
It is this year. See,
Finally, you are the most optimistic.
You can start a Jared Goff chant anytime, right?
But I remain optimistic about it. I think we got the great, the fundamental points of what we need to grow our economy. We've got a workforce. We need to grow that and develop that. And you look at the fundamental things that business leaders look at for where they're going to grow and expand their operations. They look at talent and workforce as their number one and number two, probably combined, basically are a number one consideration. They look at infrastructure. We need to improve that. I'm proud and thankful to serve on the Transportation Infrastructure Committee with Representative McDonald Rivet. We got a Coast Guard ice cutter approved in this reconciliation process for the Great Lakes, so that's going to be another improvement and advancement that we have. That's another big win for our region, for our state. We have to look at what those fundamentals are. Instead of trying to jump the shark with the new thing every time, what if we just get back to the basics and look at energy costs, infrastructure, talent development, our education pipeline, and those things that are disciplined, and you need to do them, and I think that will naturally lead to better economic opportunity for our state.
Yeah.
The regulatory environment, all of these things are just huge when you look at where is it easy and where is it harder to invest and grow, and we want to make it as easy as possible.
Everyone else, is there one thing that you're trying to tackle at the federal level that you think is almost immediate right now, Kristen?
So I feel like I've spent my entire career working on the child care problem. But I hear it really, Michigan's lost 40% of our childcare capacity in the last 10 years. It is an emerging economic crisis to be able to, and childcare costs are somewhere generally between $12,000 and $14,000 a kid.
Yeah.
So we just have to make it, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but, I'm working on a bill with a Republican member to be able to make, on the affordability issue, being able to use 529s to help pay for childcare expenses. So that, I think, is incredibly important, and and something that we all kind of agree on. We have to figure out this childcare issue. But I also just want to say, when Tom's talking about the regulatory environment, he's right. It is too hard to, the permitting processes for things take too long. There are bureaucratic layers that are involved with almost all federal programs and funding streams that are coming to our states. They make it really hard for states to implement them, and I think that's a space in the federal landscape that we can work on.
Bill?
I'll break it into two parts. One is more Michigan specific. We talked about the Great Lakes, continuing to focus on that. Ag is another one of those. Ag labor, the H2A and the H2B, by the way, that's an important issue up here. How do we get that workforce on a temporary basis in and out of our country? That's something that we have worked on a bipartisan basis as well. I've gotten a new assignment through Foreign Affairs. So I'm vice chair of the Financial Services Committee, but I also chair a subcommittee on Foreign Affairs. And it's South Central Asia, it's India to Bangladesh, and then all the way north through all the stands, Pakistan, Afghanistan, all the great places that are in the news recently. India, so that's a bit of a challenge. But part of that is we're doing a reauthorization of the State Department, which a full reauthorization has not happened since 2003. Over 20 years ago, in a post 9/11 world, is the last time that we really did a full authorization of the State Department. Within that, I've been given the assignment to work with something called the BIS, Bureau of Industry and Security, which is a Commerce Department aspect. And stick with me, here's why it's important. This has to do with all of the technology transfers, including the chips, with the debate that we're having. So, been meeting with the head of NVIDIA, been meeting with the head of a number of these tech companies that are making the chips. We are very, very dependent, obviously, on Taiwan, Korea, Japan, and we're trying to gain more of that here in the United States. But how do we make sure that we stay ahead of China? That is a very important part of this. And so that's a lot of focus and concentration that we've been doing as it relates to us on a national security level, but specifically for us here in Michigan as we're trying to attract those data centers, but also making sure that chip production could happen here.
Debbie, what's most urgent to you right now for Michigan?
I feel like I'm drinking from a fire hydrant, if you want to know the case, truth. And I think a lot of people don't even understand the unintended consequences of what's happening. And I know my colleagues join me. These two are friends. Tom and I are working on veterans together. I've got to make sure that our VA hospitals still have the doctors and nurses and our veterans can get care. And I know that everybody here does. I found out last Friday that many of our Head Start programs may have been shutting down on Friday if they didn't hear about their funding. Well, sometimes it's finding the right person to help you. So thankfully, yesterday we got calls to every Head Start agency that was going to be impacted because I found the right person at HHS. But, our universities and the research and the scientific grants and the kind of generational research that's going on, making sure that everybody has access to clean, affordable water is a basic human right. We all celebrated Flint being taken off that list, but I still want to get the lead out of every pipe in America. And I could go with 20 more. It's not a dull time.
Yeah. Tom, you mentioned getting back to the basics, but there's a lot of talk now that AI is unavoidable, and we've talked about unemployment, and a lot of business leaders think it's going to exacerbate those numbers. Michigan's already lost 27,000 manufacturing jobs, and you think AI might be a reason you never get those back. But Another business leader said, members of Congress are woefully behind on understanding AI. Do you agree with that?
Well, who was that business leader?
It was the owner of
I'm going to
Axios.
find that guy. No, I'm kidding. I mean, look, I'm not going to pretend that I know everything about AI because I'm a helicopter pilot and an Army grunt, right? So like,
Could Congress do better, I guess? Do they need to do a better job with that?
Yeah, absolutely. But at the end of the day, I'm elected to serve in a role in Congress, not to know how to program an AI chatbot to make your homework in 5th grade easier. I'm elected to make sure that we have systems in place that have the guardrails that are necessary to allow for innovation without the exploitation in ways that are damaging to people. So while it's clever for a billionaire tech guy to like throw shots at members of Congress, why don't you come do my job, regulate the entire apparatus of industry, worry about national defense, worry about the collection of stands that Bill's got on his portfolio, deal with the VA challenges that Debbie and I are working on, handle all the concerns about national security threats that we have, the immigration challenges that the country is facing, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the other things that we're all working on. So while it's fine and cute and all dandy and you can take shots at people in elected office because we're an easy target to take shots at, you shouldn't want me programming your AI, right? I need to be familiar with it enough to know where the limitations exist, where the pitfalls are, and what we need to know to make sure that it is not evolving in a way that is damaging to people and to human life. And that's what I look at it from, is I think we have a real potential for risk there from a national security standpoint that can be exploited by bad actors. It's less about the convenience aspect of AI to me and more about the absolute real life consequences of national security threats that could come from that being exploited.
But also taking jobs away from people too, right?
Well, I mean, I think we've been saying for years now, what was it when the automobile was invented, that they said that all the horse and buggy people were going to be unemployed, and maybe they all moved to Mackinac Island, I don't know. But the economy evolves, right? People innovate and they find new things. And yeah, there might be applications of AI that disrupt certain industries, but I also think that there will be things that come up that ultimately replace those.
Bill's writhing in his chair.
Yeah, sorry. I do think that there's a difference between driving efficiency, right, and what you're talking about, a replacement of a job. And I feel like I don't disagree with Tom at all. It's easy to take the shot and that kind of thing, but we all have different lanes that we get assigned. I mean, this is sort of the Schoolhouse Rock part of it, right? Where each committee that we have that we're assigned to, we have to do that work. I happen to sit on the Financial Services Committee, which has been dealing with the notion of AI in financial services for a long time, whether it's in real estate and searching titles, whether it's how credit card issuers or processors are trying to weed out fraud. I mean, there's a tremendous usage of this technology that will actually drive efficiency in and make some of that more secure. And so we have to kind of distinguish that, but I happen to have been exposed to it maybe earlier and longer because of a committee assignment. It is a true statement, I think, to say that in general, government tends to run behind private sector, right? Where they're just going to be on that very cutting edge. And oftentimes we're playing catch up on that, whether it's with the regulatory side of things or whether it's an acceptance and how our rules are dealt with. So I think there's a combination of truth to that we have to get better at understanding what the implications are going to be. But thanks to Tom's point, is we can't just think about, yes, you can technologically do this. We have to think about, should we technologically do
the
this?
ethics of it. Yeah.
Kristen, do you want to jump in?
I do. I actually think we're only beginning to understand what AI is going to mean in our day-to-day life, much less what it means for business. And I think that we have a responsibility to make sure there's some guardrails around it, because there are national security risks. I completely agree with that. But I like any other innovation that is going to transform the world, which is what AI is going to do, I think we need to be on the forefront of it. We need to make sure that we are not blocking its development beyond the national security risks. Things like data centers will be incredibly important for Michigan. I want them here, provided we're doing it correctly. But we also have to create some room in our education system that allow for our kids that are coming through to be able to work in the environment that we don't even know is coming, that AI is going to create.
Yeah.
And, I don't mean to be the doom and gloom, but there is a reality here in Michigan that we have, we're graduating kids all the time from our public school system that can't do basic math. We are doing them a disservice of the world that is coming for them. And, we need to be focusing on those fundamentals that are prepping people across the country, but right here in Michigan, to make sure that we can embrace that and grow with it. And, not just regard this as something that is going to, create false political ads or a chat GPT that may be writing a high school essay when it shouldn't, right? It's much bigger than that, and we have to create the room for it to grow.
And can I add? I'm sorry, I want to let Debbie talk if she wants.
Well, I'm more aggressive than all of you. We need guardrails.
Generally, yes.
Not true. I don't think that's true.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
She did wear red.
I did wear red. We need to be getting the guardrails up. And by the way, frequently, we also haven't gotten privacy legislation through in how many years? Not because privacy is a partisan issue, because California blocks us every time on being able to deal with it. Now, buried in this great, one big, beautiful bill was a provision that blocks states. I don't even know if you two know it. That blocks states from doing anything on AI regulation for a decade, that you would not be able to do that. And I just happen to think that's wrong, because frequently states can be where regulation comes from that is good. And AI, we got to do something about our schools. I'm proud of the fact that one of the first bills that Donald Trump signed was a bill I was a co-leader on the deep fake bill that he signed last Friday, which, would stop social media from doing. Teenagers were seeing fake images of themselves. Teenagers, so were politicians, naked and embarrassing and whatever.
I didn't
Those
have
are now
those.
banned with, what?
Nobody was buying my fake images. So.
But you also supported that bill. Everybody did.
Yes,
We got it out of
yes.
committee.
Go ahead.
No, you can go.
Okay, so but to that point, what we're trying to do, I think this discussion with AI, the same thing with crypto. I did a tremendous amount of work on crypto. If we have a patchwork of 50 different
We
rules.
don't need a patchwork. I do agree with that.
And so at some point, whether it's exactly like the bill that you just had, if we've got New York laws versus California laws versus Michigan laws about this image reproduction, or on crypto, or on AI, I do think this is part of the whole Commerce Clause element of the Constitution, where there are those issues where the federal government should create a little space and say, hey, we need to figure this out. Because I hear it all the time from crypto investors, for example. They're looking for other places because we have not come up with our basic ground rules here in the United States. We're working on that. Genius Act out of the House, or I'm sorry, out of the Senate. Stablecoin Act out of the House. That is a start to this, but we've got to get better. We got to move faster on it because technology and the industry is moving far faster. We've got other smaller, I would argue, less secure countries that are sort of setting the rules instead of us doing that. And so, again, to kind of bring it back to that, I think there are those times and places where the federal government has to create a little space for itself to figure out what the general rules of the road should be for the entire nation, not just having a California dictate what it's.
And I agree with Bill's assessment. When you're talking about broad-based technological systems of commerce between states, there's no way that the transfer of ones and zero binary code is going to stop at a state borderline. That's just implausible to think. And I think we have to have robust guardrails on this. I was at something last week, and I met the man who invented Alexa, the Amazon Alexa. He named it after his daughter, named Alexa. And he's like, and now I get all these letters from parents who have daughters named Alexa that are like fatigued by this. But he was telling me that AI, he's like, all of the stuff that we're seeing is not the real AI potential that is out there. And he's like, this is like basically the carnival ride of AI of what we're seeing. Yeah. And then there's a bunch of other stuff. And he said the innovation around data centers, and he was talking about data centers that could be in place that would not hog up all the energy consumption that we're all anticipating will be necessary and what that's going to look like. So to the point of many up here, like government tends to be a few steps behind, and I get that that is the case. So we have to look over the horizon a little bit about where the ball is going, not where the ball is right now.
Yeah.
I'm just glad the guy's daughter's name wasn't like Gertrude or Miller. Mildred. Hey, Gertrude.
Hey, Gertie. Got about 5 minutes, so if I could get about a minute from each of you. I have a question for each party, and I'll start with the Dems. One of the criticisms of the party is anytime you dare to work with the other side, or even the White House, the rest of the party ostracizes you for it. Debbie, do you think that's fair, and are repercussions, no matter how severe they are, worth it if it gets something done for your state and your district?
I have a long history of working across the aisle, and I'm very proud of the fact that I work across the aisle. Fred Upton's been my best friend forever. Bill and I have been friends for a long time, and Tom. I mean, I was telling people this right before we came in. Tom's grandfather died in John Dingell's arms. So I think you get more work done when you do work across the aisle. People know who I am. They know exactly who I am. And I'm going to do what's right. I'm going to stand up if you're going to hurt the people that I represent. If you're going to hurt my state, I'm not afraid to speak up. And if we can get something done, we will look for that common area, and you need to.
Your own party sometimes, Kristen, doesn't agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's fair. I can tell you that I work in a bipartisan way as well. We're in a really partisan environment, but frequently when I was in the state Senate, I would work with Republicans. Frequently, even in this climate in Congress, there are many bills that you see Democratic and Republican votes both on, and I don't feel ostracized by my party in doing that. In fact, when I work for the people of the 8th District, and I actually think that working in a bipartisan way is what helped me overperform in almost every single precinct in the district.
To the Republicans, the criticism of your party sometimes is the question. I'll ask it this way: Bill, are you willing to speak out against the president of your party, the president of the United States, when you think it's warranted? Like, for example, he takes a $400 million gift in the form of a plane from a country he previously scolded others for taking money from.
Well, I've got the experience of the first 4 years as well, and what I always tell people is I call balls and strikes. And I think if it rises to that level, it's a little interesting now. Literally, the media would call every single tweet that he would put out his first term, right? That has changed and calmed down a little bit. But I've got a long track record of doing that. I was the only first Republican that had put a bill in regarding family separation when that was happening, as we were having the border crisis, prohibiting that, for example. But I want to kind of go back to what Kristen was saying. I think we all have to represent our districts and make the decision of what we are going to do. I happen to actually be very good friends with her husband when we both served in the state house. You have to go and work with the people that are elected. I get criticized by that. I've had people say, "Hey, you shouldn't even be talking to those people." And my reply to them is, "Well, if we're not talking, how are we supposed to figure out whether we agree on 5%, 15%, or 50%?" So my job is, okay, you might not be able to picture yourself interfacing with these folks, but guess what? That's my job. I have to. Yeah. And whether it's Joe Biden or Barack Obama, the other two presidents that I've served under, or whether it's Donald Trump, 1 and now 2, I have to go and work with an administration to make sure that it's good for Michigan, it's good for my constituency. Same thing with people in majority and minority, whether it's in the House or the Senate.
Tom, you comfortable criticizing the president when you disagree with something he puts in place?
Yeah, I mean, I've had an independent record since I went into political office and got elected 10 or 11 years ago now, and I worked in a bipartisan fashion there and have continued that in Washington. And I don't pretend to be something I'm not. I'm a conservative, and I lean into that, but I'm also willing to be an independent voice on things that matter to me that I think is important, and worked with both parties. I had probably 3 dozen or more bipartisan bills that I sponsored as a member of the state legislature, done 2 or 3 that have now passed the U.S. House in the time that I've been elected to Congress that had substantial bipartisan support. Some even passed unanimously through the House of Representatives, and want to continue that work. And I think that's important. We're not going to, it's fake to think that we're going to agree on everything all the
Right.
time. I mean, politics exists because we have to have a method of solving our disagreements. So we elect people to go and determine that, and we have debate, and we have decisions, we vote on it, and we move forward. If we all agreed on everything, we wouldn't need to send people to Washington, D.C. to decide those differences for us.
Well, look at that. I yield back my time, Senator.
Wow.
40 seconds.
Oh,
How
wait a
about a
minute, you have
hand?
4 politicians, they take 10 seconds more. Right.
How about a hand for our legislative leaders up here, our congressional delegation?
Thank you.
20 extra seconds. How about that? Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time today this morning, guys. Enjoy the conference.